In this video, we're going to be focusing on cerebral blood supply. Last year, MP1, we did talk about cerebral supply briefly, and yes, you guys needed to know, but in this chapter, we're not required to know all, but we just need to learn how your blood flows from your carotid arteries to your brain, and how your venous circulation takes up blood away from your brain back to your heart. But in this case, this will be the cerebral supply, arterial supply. So we're going to begin with internal carotid artery. So last time we stopped with from your aortic arch to all the way down to your hands, correct? And this time we'll be talking about from your aortic arch all the way to your brain. Okay, so internal carotid artery, which will supply the anterior portion of the brain, and we have the vertebral artery. Give me that. So we have the vertebral artery that will supply the posterior aspect of your cerebrum. Internal carotid artery supplying the front, vertebral artery supplying the back of your brain. Simple as it is. So we're going to talk more about specific branches off from internal carotid arteries. So carotid arteries give rise to three arteries that is very important. Anterior cerebral arteries, which will supply the brain to your frontal part of your brain, such as your frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex, etc. Your middle cerebral arteries will supply the middle part of your brain, so your temporal lobes, your central sulcus, any brain parts that are in the midline or your middle of your brain, middle region. And your ophthalmic artery will supply from your frontal part of your brain and all the way to your eyes. So these are the various connections that will actually make from your eyes to your brain. So they do need a lot of blood supply. Okay, so three branches: anterior cerebral, middle cerebral, ophthalmic. That's from the internal carotid arteries. What about external? Well, external usually will supply the face. So it will supply your lower jaws, upper jaws, just general face area, your cheeks, your bones, a little bit below your eyes, your mandibular area, and things like that. So it will supply your neck too, upper necks, lower necks. Okay, all right. So let's talk more about vertebral. So vertebral branches off from subclavian arteries, right? So branches off from subclavian arteries. So we have left and right vertebral. So these vertebral arteries will eventually fuse together at the brainstem level. What brainstem level? Usually medulla. So at the medulla level, they'll fuse together to become a basilar artery. Vertebral artery passes through foramen magnum, the big hole that connects your spinal cord with your skull. It will pass through the foramen magnum, and as soon as it passes, it's going to fuse together to become a basilar. So basilar artery will supply blood to your pons, midbrain, etc. Vertebral will supply partially of your medulla, but usually there's another branch that's coming off from basilar to supply your medulla, pons, midbrain specifically. But you don't have to know those. Just know that your vertebral arteries will fuse together to become a basilar, and these basilar eventually branches off to left and right posterior cerebral. So as you can see, we have the anterior cerebral, posterior cerebral. Don't get confused with cerebellar, because we also have another branch that branches off right before it becomes basilar. It's called the cerebellar. Cerebral and cerebellar are totally different things. Don't get confused with cerebellar. Cerebellar artery will supply your cerebellum. Okay? You guys don't have to know these, but just know that basilar give rise to your cerebral arteries, your cerebrum. Okay. So these are the two major arteries that supplies your front and your back. Alright, how are these actually connected? So, blood supply has to be connected to have a very good flow. We can't just have one part supply this part and just separate it. And I know, hopefully you guys know by this at this point, right below hypothalamus, right below the hypothalamus, we have a master gland that releases a lot of hormones. That region is called pineal gland. Alright, surrounding the pineal gland, we actually have very branches of artery that makes a circle. That's called a circle of Willis. That's it. These circle of Willis will circle around the pineal gland and supply constant blood supply to your pineal gland. If you guys remember, pineal gland has a lot of blood supply. Hypophyseal portal system. Yes, from your hypothalamus to your pineal gland, it needs a lot of tons and tons of artery supplies because we have hormones that are released from the pineal gland that needs to be sent to the brain, sent to the body, and also your pineal gland needs a constant oxygen supply to have good functions. Right? All right. So let's start with basilar. So basilar actually give rise to, okay, I forgot to fix it. It's supposed to be posterior, but basilar give rise to your posterior cerebral artery and left and right posterior cerebral arteries, correct? All right. So that should be posterior, but I don't know why there's any left. Okay, that should be posterior cerebral arteries. All right. So those posterior cerebral arteries will connect with your internal carotid arteries. How? Via posterior communicating artery. So it's going to connect with your internal carotid artery via posterior communicating artery. From here, your internal carotid artery will give rise to your middle cerebral artery and your anterior, right? And your anterior will kind of go towards the midline of the brain and circles around the top and supply the frontal part of the brain. And these anterior cerebral arteries also connected together via anterior communicating artery. So we have two communicating arteries in this case. Anterior connecting the two anterior cerebral arteries. We have the posterior communicating arteries connecting the internal carotid artery with posterior cerebral artery. And since basilar is just one artery that further branches down into posterior, this will make the circle. It's called the circle of Willis. And next video, we're going to talk more about, no, not the next video. Next slide, we're going to talk more about these in depth, like more shorter summarized words. Yes. Okay. All right. Let's go. All right. That's it. That's all you need to know. All right. Very easy. Yes. Okay. So external carotid artery supply your neck, lower jaw, and face. Okay. And your internal carotid artery supplies your anterior portion of the cerebrum, which further branches into anterior cerebral artery towards the midline, middle cerebral artery, the middle of the brain, ophthalmic artery towards your eyes. So those are the three majors. What about your vertebral? Well, they'll go up through your cervical transverse foramina in your spinal cord. They'll go all the way up, passing the foramen magnum, the big holes in your skull, and they'll actually eventually fuse together to become a basilar. Basilar will supply the brainstem, back of the brain, all the way to your midbrain, and eventually they'll actually divide into left and right posterior cerebral arteries. Clear. And then these internal carotid artery, basilar, posterior cerebral arteries, anterior cerebral arteries will form a circle region called circle of Willis. Right here. Okay. Alright. That's about it in this video. In the next video, we're going to be talking more about your thoracic and abdominal aorta.